What's up, United Report Nation? It's your boy Manny here. Welcome back to the Hoop Report, the NAIA Women's Basketball Podcast, episode number 55. A lot has gone into it. It actually might even be 54. I think I'm jumping ahead of myself here. So episode number 54. Got a coach's interview here lined up for you guys. A coach that, it's been a lot to try and get her on. Again, very, very busy woman, and I don't blame her. I know what it's like to be able to do this, and especially being in one of the conferences. It's been a lot of fun for me to cover. It has been a whirlwind, and we're going to get into that. But without further ado, Coach Anji Weissenfluh. Coach, I cannot tell you how excited I am for this interview. I cannot tell you how excited I am to talk about a lot. And obviously, that conference that you call home has been a whirlwind this year. So we're obviously going to start there. But, Coach, first things first, I appreciate the time, and I can't wait to get into it.
Okay, thank you for, inviting me, and I apologize that it's been tough. Obviously being right in the thick of the season, but I'm also the athletic director, so lots of moving parts. But I appreciate your patience, and I'm excited to talk to you and share what the Cascade Conference is about. And like you said, it's been a crazy year. It's been a really fun year, but it's been a crazy year.
No, absolutely, and props to you for being an athletic director, especially in the NAIA. We know how tough it can be at this level, and you've done it in stride, and so I definitely give you your flowers for that because it is not an easy job to do. But like you mentioned, the Cascade, it's been, I don't know how much this has remind you of years in the past. I don't know if this has ever happened before, but I mean, we'll get right into it because the first question kind of summarizes the entire year. There was a point about a month or so ago where legitimately there was an argument from a statistical standpoint. Five teams all had chance to be the number one seed. 10-3 across the board. Like, everybody was right there and nip and tuck all the way through. A bunch of tiebreakers and head-to-heads and just every type of rule you could think of. With that being said, the season then ends, and now the difference between the first and the sixth seed is 2 games. It's 2 games. Again, it has been as close as I've ever seen at any conference at any level throughout an entire season. So just talk to me about the depth of this conference. How has it been this year, being in that first chair, having to scout, having to understand? And I believe this is also the first year that you guys moved to back-to-back Fridays and Saturdays. I believe that is also so that wasn't a situation.
No, we've been doing that for quite some time.
Got you. So just talk a little bit about that, about how it's been just coaching in the Cascade and what could be arguably one of the best years ever.
Yeah, so I'm also a Raider, and so every week, obviously I'm living it in the Cascade, but I'm also looking at it from an analytic and marketing and selling who other Raiders should be voting for. And I think weekly, I think they got tired of me saying, "Hey, our sixth place team could jump to be our first place team in 2 weeks when another poll comes out." And I kept on saying, and I kept on thinking, as we progress through this season, it will all play itself out. And honestly, it really is. It hasn't played itself out. Yes, it came to an end, but going into the last weekend, we had all six teams separated by one game, and we had a five-way tie for first. That is crazy. That's never happened. Um, and so going into your games on Friday and then having a short turnaround, you could be playing like in our case because of tiebreakers. We were playing for first or we were playing for sixth. And then after the Friday night games, we were playing for first, and you would think it would eliminate some teams. We were playing for first or we were playing for fifth. And so, crazy fun. We like to use the word fun, but it also it you gotta be ready to play and your student athletes. We're in a day and age that it's all out there. They're looking at records, they're knowing what's at stake, they're hearing it, they're seeing it, and obviously they're feeling it. But it's been a lot of fun, and we have a lot of really really good coaches in this conference, and it's not just the top six coaches. We've got some really good coaches, and I've seen in just the last 10 years the strides as a conference as a whole 1 through 11, uh, we've all gotten better. We've all gotten better. And you mentioned back-to-back nights. I believe we are one of 2 conferences in the nation. And the other conference just started that. That's the uh, newly merged North Star and Frontier Conference that just started doing that. And so we've been doing it for a while and we've been trying to tell people how tough it is. But you're playing a really tough matchup on a Friday. And with our game times, you've got less than 24 hours to turn it around. That's hard on student athletes. Not to mention our traveling distance. You're traveling 2.5 hours in between games after your men are playing. So a lot of dynamics there, but a lot of fun. A lot of skilled players, a lot of tough players, good coaches. And when I say good coaches, I think our coaches in our conference has built some really good culture within each of their programs. Obviously, I'm not in their locker rooms and in their gyms every day, but what I'm seeing is our student athletes within the Cascade Conference are really bought in to what their coaches are promoting and what the standard is, and they're loving it. And it's just fun to compete every night against them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very impressive thing to talk about in the Cascade, not just from basketball, but from everything. I mean, you talk about a conference that is one of the best conferences, period. When you talk about sports across the NAIA level, obviously, I'm very close with Reagan Harrell, who does NAISB, and Southern Oregon was the World Series champions in softball. So, like, I've known a lot about the Cascade, but this year, deep diving into it, there were a lot of things that I was not ready for. I thought I was, but I wasn't ready for it. But I do want to touch on that note that you made about the back-to-back. Obviously now there are 2 conferences that do it, but only 2 conferences. And when you look at it from, at this time of the year, late February, early March, you're talking about back-to-backs. If you want to make a national tournament run, you want to make a red banner run, you're going to have to play some games, maybe one day in between if you're lucky. You might be talking about multiple days back-to-back. Talk a little bit about how that has prepared not just your team, but the entire conference to be ready for those moments in the postseason when you are got to be quick turnarounds. You are going to be, hey, you won, congratulations, but now we got to refocus, lock back in for the rest of the tournament. Just talk a little bit about that dynamic and the pros of going back-to-back throughout the regular season.
So I do think, going into playoffs, it definitely you have the preparation and you have the routine. A lot of times, sometimes your routine in the playoffs gets a little upset, and but I do think that prepares us. And just from a turning around a quick scout, we know recovery is huge in basketball and taking care of your bodies. That's your biggest asset as an athlete is your body. So we've got, I think most of the teams in the Cascade Conference, if not all, we've got that pretty dialed in. So from a positive standpoint, and I think we're prepared logistically. Unfortunately, there's also a flip side of that is when you're playing back to back and you're doing that starting in the middle of December all the way through the end of February, and you got these long road trips. You're going to Southern Oregon, and it takes 10 hours, 9 hours in the winter roads. You can be a little worn out. So that's another dynamic as a coach, as an athletic trainer, as a student athlete that we got to really pay attention to because it can definitely help you, but it also all catches up to you. And I've seen that throughout the Cascade Conference on both the men and women's side of our basketball teams and even our soccer teams because you get a little beat up. You get a little beat up. You get a little drained, and we all know basketball. It's a long season, and it's a physical season, and it's a mental challenge. And so it works hand in hand. It can be positive, but you got to take care of and be aware so it doesn't turn into something that you can't manage.
Absolutely. Talking about the depth of the conference, what is it about the play style of the Cascade? Obviously, for me, when I took over and we started doing our preseason kind of previews throughout the summer, one thing I did notice in the Cascade, a lot of teams out there can shoot the ball, and they can shoot the ball very, very well. I nicknamed it the make or miss conference because it just felt like, hey, on any given night, if you're not the team that is scoring the ball and scoring at a very efficient rate, you're just not going to win. And it doesn't mean you're not a good team, but it's a tough way to kind of go out. Is that the case? Is the Cascade on the side of everybody plays a similar style, maybe not identical, but a very similar style, it's just a matter of who does it better on that given night? Or is it the flip side? Everybody's got their own style for the most part. Everybody plays their own pace, their own speed, their own system, whether it's transition, whether it's slower, whatever the case is. And now it's about matchups and stuff like that. Or is it, like I said, everybody kind of plays similar. It's just a matter of who can do it better on that given night.
It's both. Most of the teams in the Cascade want to play fast. We truly want to play fast. We want extra possessions. We're fighting for the extra possession and trying to win that part of the game. So we want to play fast, but we understand that we're not going to be able to necessarily do that come conference play as well as maybe some in the preseason because our conference, even though I would call it a shooters conference, I'm like every team has shooters, and every team's going to put up the three ball. You better defend the the 3-point line, but most of our teams in our conference, and especially the top teams, it's really built on defense, physicality. Yeah. I think it's built around speed and transition and pushing the ball, shooting the ball freely. But I think we're one of the best as a whole defensive conference in the nation. It's anchored by all of them. I think of Southern Oregon, one of the top defensive teams in the conference or nation. We're one of the top team defense. College of Idaho, OIT, LC State. Now, a few of the teams play a different style of defense. We don't all play the same style, but we all emphasize that that's an important part of winning in the Cascade Conference is defensive intensity and honestly defensive matchups and discipline. And rebounding is a part of that. But you do have like LC State, they're going to, play a little matchup zone, but they're going to be long, they're going to run. But we all want to put the points on the board. But we know our opponents are going to be prepared to stop us. Right now, Corbin leads us in points per game. Man, they are high octane offense, and every player that she puts on the court that can shoot the ball, and they want it. They let it fly. But when I said it's a little bit of both, if you look at, this team swept this team split this team, it's really also dependent on matchups and that given night. Are you playing the first night? Are you playing on a Friday night? Are you playing on a Saturday night? Are you at home? Are you on the road? How far do you have to travel? Are they big? Are you small? So all things considered, I think we're pretty similar in that we're pretty disciplined teams. Our teams are well coached in the Cascade Conference. Shot selection is at a all-time premium in the Cascade Conference. Not a lot of teams are out there taking bad shots, giving you opportunity to start your transition. And so a lot of similarities in maybe that, but it looks different because some are little, some are big, some, stretch the floor. Yeah, there's lots of things that go through it. But I would say the discipline and the structure, as in, it's just well coached. And I give all the credit to our coaches to have the teams prepared every single night. And then our players, man, they have to, and they get to just go out and play. And any given night, it can look a little different.
No, absolutely, and I've been able to catch a few of the Cascade games, obviously with you all playing a little bit later. I mean, I'm able to catch some of those late nightcaps for me on the East Coast, and it is very much what you said. I can look back vividly, the Southern Oregon Tech game at Southern Oregon, very different styles, but at the same time, the game never went past 5 points. It was always a give and take. One team makes a big shot, another team makes a big shot. Teams are going to have chances to win the game. We can talk about Oregon Tech's bomb from about 30 feet out to beat LC State, I believe it was, at almost the buzzer earlier in the season. So there's a lot of different aspects of it. But talking about your team now, you all started the season off very strong. I mean, 15-0, top 25 team. I think y'all should have been in the top 25 a little bit earlier, but it's neither here nor there. And then to end the season, co-regular season champions, obviously with Corbin and talking about how important each game down the stretch was. I want to know behind the scenes, back to the summer, back to those first few weeks, those first few months of the season. What did you implement from the defensive schemes, from the offensive scheme? Just kind of what did it take to lay the foundation in August and September that allowed you all to be a part of? By the way, I was checking the website, obviously doing the research for this interview. That picture on senior day that they took that might be one of the coolest pictures I've ever seen in my life. I just want to let you know, whoever came up with that idea, they deserve a raise.
That was fun. That was fun.
A good one. But to get to that moment, that all those seniors are going to remember on their senior night, on their special day, what went into it in those first few months of the season?
Obviously preparation. Now, one of the things that people might not know is we are one of the few schools out there and one of 4 schools within our conference. We are on the quarter system, not semester. We don't even start school until late September. So what that means is our student athletes are training and building their conditioning base on their own. So first and foremost, it takes a high level, dedicated student athletes, and that's where our experience came in. They knew what to expect, and so we have to get in shape, and we got to do half the training that maybe other people get to do in August and September by just holding each other accountable via Zoom, buddy system, and some of those connectors and check-ins. And then we've always been a program. I have always believed in this strongly. We don't talk about winning championships. We don't talk about outcomes. We invest in the process. And I know that's coach talk, and every coach will throw those things out, but we really do it. We don't ever want to put the cart ahead of the horse. And so we talk about, hey, we've got these returners, but we also have, these 6 or 7 kids that we're bringing into our program. And what do we need from them to help us out? So process versus outcome. I do think experience. We returned quite a few of our players that were in our lineup. And you'll probably hear me say it more than once in this interview. Our depth has been our superpower. Being able to play 10 to 11 kids on any given night. And that hasn't been about part of our system. A lot of schools do that because they're pressing, they're running, they're doing their style of play is kind of demanding that. That hasn't been what we've been successful over the years. But for us to be successful this year, our depth, it's any given night, it's someone else's night to, step up and stand out or just make a pivotal play in a game that might have changed the outcome. And so you'll hear me say it several times. Depth has been our superpower. Preparation of just our kids buying in, our experience. And, unfortunately, like most teams in basketball, we've had some injuries. And so that's where the depth played a role in starting out 15-0.
Absolutely.
We had some depth.
Absolutely. And I did want to touch on what you said at the beginning of that well articulated answer. The amount of times, and like you said, it is coach talk. Every coach says it no matter what level. We don't talk about championships. We talk about the process. But it is true that every coach does say it. You're maybe my however many interview now throughout the entire season, and I've been grateful for every single one. But every single one of those coaches that I have talked to that have won at the highest level, that have multiple championships, that has multiple national tournament appearances and deep runs in the national tournament, because at the end of the day, yes, we don't want to get there, but we don't just want to get there and bow out. We want to get there and make a run at it. They all say the same thing. We don't talk about championships. Take me through, or to your best of your ability, what does that mean to you? How can you give an example to those at home, from a player standpoint, from a fan standpoint? When coaches say we don't talk about championship, we talk about process. How does that look, especially in your program? How does that look when you're talking to players, that you're recruiting or that you're possibly looking to come into your program? How does that look from that dynamic?
It's all about, and the Indiana football coach has been everywhere. So I'm not going to, but long before he was everywhere, he talks about coaching to a standard. And so, honestly, we from our practice structure, a lot of our matrix in all of our practice is built off, we're competing against either each other, numbers, matrix, and we have those throughout the year. And so we might come in and we might do a specific drill. And at the beginning of the year, we might, like this year, we were shooting at an efficiency rate at, in certain drills, like we'd make 44 and our goal is 75. And we know why that goal is 75. And so we talk about, hey, what are we doing and why are we not? Is it because, and one of the things that you learn early in the season and when you get new players is practicing at the level that you want to play, the speed. We don't practice over 2 hours, and this is early in the year. So I think it's just setting the standard and having the analytics, the matrix of what you're setting for, you're aiming for, and then building what that looks like, as in practicing at the level and at the tempo that maybe you're not ready for, conditioning wise, skill wise, but understanding you'll eventually get there. You'll eventually get there. So that's the process. Like we just, we know rebounding wins games. We know, and championships. We know defense. And those are things that have been proven over the test of time in our program. We also know in our program that sometimes we have to go backwards to go forwards. And it's really about giving up. We're if you look at, and I think this is a little later on that you want to ask me a question about, our versatility and our scoring or all that. But part of that is we don't build around one player. We have to teach players what unselfish ball and team ball looks like. So we're those are the kind of things that we're coaching. Those are the kind of things that we're looking at. We're not looking at who we're playing in 3 games. We're looking at where we're at in September, where we're at in October, and that's all we're concentrating on. And making, and evaluating. I think evaluation is a huge part of this process. You every team is different within, I just had a recruit on campus and was they asked me a question, and honestly, I don't even remember what the question was. It was a great question, but I defined it as each year you're coaching a new team, regardless if you have a lot of returners or not. You're coaching a new team. Now, some of the things that team a lot of the things that team is going to get coached or whatever we're going to experience, that's because we're a program. We've also been building a program, and the program things don't change. I've been here 26 years, and yes, it's grown. Yes, we've fine tuned it. Yes, we have to adapt, but a lot of it is just like that, growth mindset, but we're not changing. You know, I will never not value rebounding. And those are the things that we are coaching and talking about. and probably, creating some discipline in those areas. We're not worried about who we're playing, who the tough teams are, you know, we prepare the same regardless who we're going to play against.
Of course you do. And talking about, the highs of this season again, starting off 15-0, one of the best starts across the country, one of the last few teams left undefeated, all those great things, and again the end was great too. Again, the co-regular season champions. There was a point, as much as we all love to not lose and we all want to be undefeated and have a perfect season, it's a very hard thing to do. So we knew that first loss would eventually come, or at least get very close to, and it did end up happening for you all against Southern Oregon. And so, take me into that locker room, take me into that practice right after, take me into the immediate aftermath after the post game talk. Just what was the mindset that you felt from your team? What was the response you felt? Did you expect this response? Just talk me through that in those next few days, because obviously it's going to linger a little bit, and there'll be some upset, frustration, all that kind of stuff. But just talk to me about how your team managed and held that experience and then benefited moving forward, and did not let them waver at all throughout the season.
Yeah, ours was a little different, and I don't want to take anything away from Southern Oregon. They were dialed in that night. They jumped on us, so it was going to be an uphill battle. Yeah, it was the back to back of it was a Saturday night after we played Oregon Tech, and we had to leave it all on the court and fight to be in the game against Oregon Tech. So we were a little worn out, but Southern Oregon and they had lost the night before. And, when you're coming off of a loss, maybe in their locker room, they were talking about some things and they were ready to go. So I want to give them credit. But unfortunately, in that night, within 9 minutes into the game, one of my key players went down with an injury, tore ACL. And so my team did a lot better responding than I did. And I'm not proud to say that. I'm proud of them, disappointed in myself. But I was kind of in a fog that game because this player, one, she's a special player. Gosh, can do a lot on both sides of the. I mean, she's our glue kid. She's our IQ kid. She's our toughness. I mean, I can go on and on about what she contributes basketball wise, but she's a 6-year player in our program, and she took a gap year, came back, and she's just given so much. And unfortunately, I kind of knew when it happened. You never know for sure, and we were all praying and we were all hoping, but I was just like, "Oh no, what does this mean for Kaya?" And quite honestly, what does this mean for our team? Because she is just so pivotal. So in the locker room, I don't know if we concentrated on it was our first loss, but we were probably more concerned about her and what it meant. Now, we were thinking this might add some multiple losses to us. So, yeah, we might not have been concentrating on the first loss. We might have been looking ahead going, "Oh my gosh, what does this mean for our season?" Um, so there was some sadness, disappointment, but that's when I guess you see what your team is made of. Every team goes through adversity, and we had to see how we were going to respond. And the next week, we had a big, big matchup with Corbin at home. And in the Cascade Conference, you got to win your home games. You got to steal some on the road, but you got to win your home games. So, you know, I again going back to that darn process thing, we didn't deviate too much. It wasn't too high, it wasn't too low, other than the impact of potentially what it means for Kaya and our team and what role she played. It wasn't about just necessarily losing. We knew that was going to come. We knew that was going to come sometime. But it was really kind of how were we going to bounce back? Who was going to step up? How is adversity going to affect our team? And honestly, it was one of our proud moments and one of our biggest wins. because of the short turnaround and the team and the opponent we were playing and how we had to play that night to walk out of that one to get a win. We were pretty proud of that, but there was some sadness leading up to it.
Of course, and again, that even shows how impressive the rest of the season is, because to go through that, especially, it's one thing if it's before the season, if it's one thing if it's early in the season, but to have it at that point, I mean, we're 15 games in, we're going into the new year. This is the back end of the calendar year now when we're looking at it. So it says a lot of the testament, like you mentioned, of your team to step up and respond. And again, that depth that we're going to continue to talk about the rest of this interview is going to continue to be a prominent aspect of this team. But now moving forward to a little bit, when people are watching this, it'll be Friday morning, and you'll be getting ready for your first playoff game against Warner Pacific. This time of the year, there's a lot of different things that matter, health, recovery, all this type of things. But I think that at the end of the day, the one thing that can never be put too much of an emphasis on is momentum. Momentum is the biggest thing right now at this time of year. It's 1 week for what we've all been working for 6+ months. And then after that, it'll be a couple of weeks for what we've been working on for 6+ months. The team is right now, after you drop 2 in a row to LC State and College of Idaho, but then we turn it around 6-1 to end the season, a very strong start, or a very strong finish, I should say. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, you really, really like how the team is looking. Where would you rank the momentum that your team has right now going into their first playoff game? Do you like how the passes are looking? Do you love the energy that the team has? Just where does that momentum on your scale from 1 to 10 feel it is right now?
I feel really good about it. I think going into this last weekend, we were kind of maybe even flat again. Kind of figured out how to play through some things schedule wise. We had a couple setbacks. Um, could be a little tired, mentally fatigued, things like that. But this weekend, again, another opportunity to see what we were made of, how we were going to handle it. Some things fell our way, but we also made it fall our way, as in we competed and did some things from a strategic standpoint and an execution standpoint that we hadn't done in the last couple weeks. So I think our girls felt really good. Not like, oh, we won or lost. Winning is fun. Winning builds momentum. Building energy winning gives you energy. But I think they felt really good on how we were able to win. You know, it was how we were able to win. So I feel really good. If I had to give a scale, I'm a tough coach. I don't ever like to work with absolutes. Um, you know, but honestly, I would give us a 7 or 8. We're feeling good. We understand that we can just control what we're doing, and we're going to work. We got a lot of good possessions that we can look at and see how we can get better. But I saw some things this weekend that maybe even as a coach that I wasn't doing as good a job coaching in those areas, and my players stepped up and did them because of the kind of players that I have out on that court and in this program. So I was just super proud of them, and I think they were honestly proud of themselves. And I think that's a good thing at this time of year. You talk about momentum, but you got to feel good about how you're doing that. And so good energy. And we're also super excited about the one, traditionally for our playoffs, uh, top seeds host first round campus sites, but we have decided to do one location. So unfortunately, even though we lost the tiebreaker and didn't get to host, we'd love to be in Quinn Coliseum. We're going on the road, but we're excited about the tournament format. I think that will help in preparation, and I think that gives a tournament feel, a real tournament feel, when you see all 8 teams in the same gym fighting and working towards, the ultimate goal of bringing home a championship.
No, absolutely. And again, that is another element that, like you mentioned, the Cascade very much prepares its own teams for the goal, because at the end of the day, yes, we're all fighting for the same thing in a conference standpoint. But when we go to the national tournament, Whether you're Southern Oregon, Oregon Tech, Eastern Oregon, we want to bring that you want to bring that championship back to the Cascade to show how the conference as a whole is one of the best. So again, you see that is the mindset for the entire conference. Talking about the playoffs, and again, coaches talk coming at y'all again. Defense wins championships. In the playoffs, it's gonna be a matter of who can get that stop. No matter how much the 3-point era, the high scoring, whatever the case is, I've always believed no matter how much scoring is going on in basketball world, it just means the defense is even more important. Like if anything, it's making it more important than less important in a lot of aspects. So with that being said, you've created one of the best defenses in the country, not just the conference. I mean, you're holding opponents around that 60-point mark, which I do believe is a testament of an elite type of defense, because if you're on the offense side, you're only putting up 60, that's pretty below average. A lot of coaches want to be above 65 if possible on every given night, honestly. But that doesn't mean it was easy. That doesn't mean that the concepts were clicking for a lot of these players right off the bat. What have you seen in the season from a, again, process standpoint? At the beginning of the year, a few schemes that weren't really clicking with the players. They couldn't really grasp the full concept of it. They were there. There were moments. They were flashing, but it wasn't coming together. But now they're all humming on a string. They're moving on one accord. Just talk about those type of processes, those type of aspects that you see that has grown as this process of the season has gone throughout the year.
Yeah, one of the things is, we're really personnel, dependent, and what I mean by that is we're not the tallest. We're a small team. We're not the tallest. We're not the quickest. And so our base defense hasn't changed. That's pretty, unfortunately, that's our MO. I'd love to get taller. I'd love to get some height. I'd love to get more speed. I'd love to be able to, maybe play up the line, on the line, get aggressive. But our base defense hasn't changed. But what we have to do is we are really like scouting report, game time, we have to make adjustments. And so early on in the year, and people had to play different positions. We had to really lean into our versatility. Our post were guards. Our guards, we tried to post them up. We tried to go big for us. When I say big for us, we're still little. Uh, so it was just trying to find and making sure that people understood our base defense, and then where we had to adapt if it was our ball screen coverages. That was probably our biggest. We couldn't just have one, two, or three ball screen coverages. And typically I do two ball screen coverages. Hey, simplicity has we have done well with simplicity. I always say, man, we have elementary defense, but we just want to do it really, really well. Unfortunately, we had to open up some things and go, okay, we can't just. It's too simple. It's too simple because of some of the disadvantages that we had and some of the things that teams could do. So really, kind of adjust. And some of our players took some time to adjust. I, you know, I needed to be a better teacher early, but I do think what gave us confidence, even though we had to adjust and it wasn't at the level, and they maybe didn't understand some of the language. Another thing is making sure your terminology is consistent. And with our newbies, I think they heard some terminology they haven't heard, and it's not because it's some great terminology and we're doing things way different because it's not. It was just different from their junior college, different from their high school, just a different coach. But what I think happened in our favor is regardless if they were confident in it, they believed in it because we came out right away and we got the opportunity to play Boise State. It was a great exhibition game for us, and we were able to hold them to 59 points. And Boise State is having a really good season. And so I think it gave them confidence, even though they didn't know how it was all working, because how we played that game The very next game that we played, we had to do it a little different, but we had to keep kind of letting them know our base defense is not changing, just a few just a few coverages. Um, and they've been able to adapt. They picked up, they believe, they buy in, they go out there, they play hard. I mean, a lot of good things can happen on defense if you're just moving and playing hard
Absolutely.
and
And
talking.
And now, we'll talk about the offense side of the ball because as much as you all are a great defensive team, y'all can put the ball in the basket with the best of them. Obviously, and I think what kind of sums up this team is, yes, you do have one player who is leading you on scoring, the only player that is above 10 points, and that, of course, is Kelsey Signer. She's averaging 14.5, 8.3 rebounds. She's had 10 double-doubles in the season. She had a 20-10 game against LC State that was very impressive, and we'll get to her in a moment. But when I was trying to figure out what or who to talk about next, I couldn't pick because you have so many players that are averaging over 5 points a game, and that's a very telling sign of a team that is just moving the ball well. It doesn't matter who's the one scoring; they're giving up good shots for great shots. I mean, you've got a Kelsey Cass, Maggie Smith, Kalia Walia, Renia Niemeyer, Haley Johnson, and just the list goes on and on. What do you credit that standpoint of it? And again, I credit you for building a great offensive scheme for these players to thrive in. But from the players themselves, what allows them to just be okay with trusting the next pass, okay with, hey, this person is going to make the right decision when that time does come? Talk a little bit about that, and that's allowed them to create such a lot of fun to watch offense. Like, this is an offense is a lot of fun to watch on any given night. Even if it's a rough night, I still enjoy watching it because it's just good basketball at the end of the day. Where does that come from these players?
I think just being willing to put the team above individual of what they might want to be able to do out on the court, and they're putting the team above all. And just really beat home shot selection. We're not talking about, we're not trying, like, scheme wise, we're not going in thinking, how are we going to get Kelsey 20 shots a game? How are we going? We're just not built that way. Kelsey's not built that way. We're thinking, how can we put each individual in a position to, be able to be confident when they get their shots, to be able to knock those shots down or at least take them. So, one challenge is, if you look at our point guard, and she's a great freshman point guard, and her minutes are growing, we're just trying to get her to have confidence in her shot because she's a true point guard. That, hey, she distributes. She played with arguably the freshman of the year at the D1, Jazzy Davis out of USC. She was her point guard for 4 years. Now we're saying, Avery, it's your turn. It's your turn. You get to step up, and now you get to take that shot. So we really just talk about shot selection versus personnel. If it's a good shot for you and within our offense, we're going to take it. But also, just how our offense is created, we're just going to get a lot of different looks for a lot of different people, and hopefully we empower them to take those shots. And then obviously our practice mirrors that. We put up a lot of shots in practice as well. And we work a lot on one more, one more. And it's not just doing it. We're big on talk. I think talk gives you vision, and it gives you your teammate. They get to lock in on, if it's driving, beating someone off the dribble, if it's working on being ball quick, getting the ball into the post. If you're hearing a teammate over here, it helps you be quicker, better court vision. And I think that helps us run a little bit more efficient offense. And people know I'm going to put them in a lot of positions to have the ability to score.
Absolutely. And when we talk about Kelsey, because one thing I always like to say, when you're having this type of system where the ball is moving around, it's going to find who it needs to find, and oftentimes it's going to find Kelsey. And there's nothing against her teammates, but she's that impactful of a player on that side of the ball where if she gets the
Absolutely.
ball, even if she's not scoring, she's going to be involved in some type of way. She's going to always have her fingerprints on any possession, especially offensively. What from an IQ standpoint has that affected the team? Because again, that's not by accident. If the ball's finding you on almost every possession, there's probably a reason behind it. The basketball gods believe that that is a good opportunity for you to create for either yourself or your team. Just talk about her IQ and her ability to just be basketball aware, understand what's going on, think two plays ahead, so to speak, and be ready for that ball when it does come to her at any point in the possession.
Well, I think you probably just said it best. I mean, it all starts with the basketball IQ, is understanding that you can still impact your team, and when you are when you're being covered a certain way of of hey, getting the ball to someone else. But the thing that makes Kelsey is she really works to make herself presentable as where we can go through her. If it's in the low post, she's hunting her shots and not in a selfish way. When people hear that, it's like, oh, they're selfish. They want to get their points. Not what she's doing for our team. She's hunting her shots and opportunities. So she's being defended, and that allows other people to get open. And she's not doing it at the detriment of our team. She's very versatile. She can, we she's one. I just had to put it down. Is she a guard or a forward? I don't know. We play her everywhere. We play her. Yeah, some nights she's fully a guard. Some nights she's fully a forward. But she has the inside out game. Um, she's not to necessarily really kill you off the dribble, but goes back to that IQ. She's going to get herself in spots that she's not going to have to uh, need that too much. And she's improved that part of her game as well. But she's versatile. She's smart. Most above all, she's a blue collar worker. It's all built on work and being selfless. Whatever this team needs, Kelsey's going to do on both ends of the ball. She's one of our strongest leaders off the court as well. She just leads by example.
You can see it on the court there again. A lot of people hear the words gravity on basketball court and they think, shooting and stuff like that. But gravity is for anybody who has that ability, low post, on the perimeter, whatever the case is. Coach, I've taken enough of your time, so I'm going to combine these last two questions a little bit together here. We talked about this Friday night when everybody's watching this interview, obviously. Playing one Pacific. And obviously, you've already beaten them twice in season, but I want to know the ability to beat a team three times in one season is a hard thing to do, no matter who you're playing against. It is one of the hardest things to do in basketball because you've seen this team twice already, especially if they haven't gotten their win yet. The games are getting closer. Obviously, I went back and looked at the box score for those two games, and it's getting progressively closer. So we all expect it to be a very good test, but it's also the first step into doing something that you have done multiple times, and that's even though you're co-regular season champions, I'm gonna give you that one. So you're co-regular season champions to try and sweep in the Cascade, especially in a year like this, is something that's gonna be very, very impressive to do for yourself, for your staff, for your players. So talked about how playing in a game where it's hard to beat a team three times is also going to set you up to do something that's going to be very, very hard, period, and winning the Cascade tournament in a year where anybody can win it, in a year where things are all over the place. On any given night, you just don't know what's going to happen. So just talk a little bit about how this game tonight is actually going to set you up, set your team up for something that they've been wanting to do and something that if they do, it will be a very, very impressive feat this year in the Cascade.
Yeah, I think the first step is throughout this year, we have truly understood because we have been at the top of the conference. We might have been one game ahead, we might have been tied, but we have consistently been at the top of the conference. But my team, as well as my coaching staff, we have been well aware that we have not been the favorites. This will be, and take nothing away from Corbin, but or my own team, and we're co-regular season champ. No one's going into that Cascade Conference tournament being the favorites. And traditionally, and maybe years past, I would say when we have won the conference champ or even co-champs, when we have shared them, we probably have been the favorites. It's not true this year. 1 through 6, and anyone can beat could and when I say 1 through 6, 7 and 8 can win. But when I was talking about favorites, but I think it's making sure that you stay grounded in the moment. You understand where all the teams are. You understand everyone's fighting for something. Everyone's playing for something. So what you may have, one time you played them at home, you're able to beat them by a certain amount. The next night, it might have been where they were building momentum, so it looked different. But staying grounded in the moment and not making any moment too big, and just focusing on what do we need to do offensively, defensively, and to be successful. What's our game plan? And I think that also, uh, I'm going to challenge my assistant coach. I always do. Uh, what is our game plan? We can't just think we played them 3 weeks ago and it's going to be the same. They've changed. We've changed. Now, what do we have to do? Where are they at? So I think understanding the whole season, and we do. My players do. I do. We're going in and playing Warner Pack, and we're playing a fresh Warner Pack team. They're playing a fresh EOU team, and we got to play that game that night and do what it needs, and not be worrying about anything other than possession by possession and make adjustments.
Absolutely, Coach. Coach, I really appreciate the time. And again, like you just said in that last answer there, a lot of times, we know who the better teams are. But I always like to say, for 40 minutes on a Friday or on a Saturday, anything could happen. You might be the best team. You might be, no matter what happens, sometimes we've seen, and I always say back, back to this time last year when I was still just a fan and just looking around the country and what's going on, I saw Blue Mountain Christian, the Southern States, from the 8th seed go off and win the conference tournament. I saw Allures from the WAC in the 5th seed run the gauntlet and win the tournament. I saw Bethel from the 5th seed and then add a magical run all the way through the national tournament to the Fab Four. So it's happened. And we all know what's going to happen this weekend. It's what we love about basketball. Because, again, there's a lot of times, I'm not going to sit here and say that some of these teams that win the conference tournament are the best team. But for 40 minutes on a couple nights throughout the week, they were. And that's all that matters sometimes. And that's really what it comes down to. But, Coach, I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate the behind the scenes. And, again, one of the winningest programs, not just in the Cascade, but in the country. I'm rooting for you guys. You all have been a very fun watch. That conference, your team, it is so much fun. I actually look forward to staying up late at night, even though I know I shouldn't, and just watch a lot of Cascade basketball because it is some of the best in the country. So I cannot wait to see what the tournament's going to give us, what the national tournament's going to give us, because y'all are going to have a lot of teams in there. I'm sure of it. Y'all got the resume to prove it. So I really appreciate it, Coach, and I can't wait for the next time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and getting me on here. And there's a reason that March is the best month in sports, because of March Madness, everyone is rooting for that underdog, that play. And you said it, on any given night, 40 minutes, and that's all you're worried about is 40 minutes. 40 minutes, one game at a time. So I appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck throughout the postseason. And, hopefully maybe we meet up.
Oh, I would love that, Coach. I really, really would. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.